to go to college in their family, going to such a great and prestigious place as Georgetown. And you wonder, what are these young people going to do with their lives, huh? So there's that movement, and yet we know the majority of Latinos in our country are working class. It's pretty evenly divided now between those who were born outside of Latin America, and the larger number now were born in the United States. So we have a rising number of assimilating Latinos. So how does this topic relate to the complexity of the group that we're talking about? We need to be heads up, huh? We need to understand that. That's the first point. Second point, what is absolutely fundamental is the very point that Ambassador Noriega was sharing with us, namely, the connection between the faith and justice, the connection between it. Because I teach at a university now, and those of us who teach in universities have observed the fact that if you, in the university context, you tell people that you're interested in justice, everybody is, hey, yeah, of course, well, we're interested in justice, all kinds of different areas of, equality, human rights, and all these good things. But when you add, yeah, but we're interested also in justice that's built and that flows from our faith. Oh, and it's kind of like, The challenge there then is this, particularly in academic and more learned contexts, how we can resist the tendency to collapse the subject of faith in justice. In other words, we need to appreciate what is it that's distinctive that our faith commitment brings to what we are about in life. It's not that we're against our colleagues who are also passionate, but not necessarily out of faith. We are passionate out of not only moral analysis or intellectual insight or knowledge about the injustices that are around us, but we also are passionate about it because when we were baptized, we were called to follow Jesus Christ. Follow Jesus Christ. To know Jesus Christ. And to live our lives in fellowship with other people who also see as the goal of their life to imitate and to reflect the love. And fundamentally, what that faith tells us is that it's about love, it's about God's love for us, and that our love of God isn't real, is not verified, if it is not expressed in love of neighbor, love of others, and with a little additional point, love particularly of the poor and the excluded and the marginal. And we do this out of love. And this is very, very, very important. And I say it's important particularly in the Latino context. It's very important. Because people of faith, particularly the ordinary people, the popular people in Latin America, are suspicious of ideology. And one of the points that Francis has been very strong about, is that he's trying to promote a church that's focused on really serious matters of social, economic, and political concern, but to do it in a way that avoids the pitfall of falling into leftism or rightism, okay? Whatever you want to call it, ideologies of different sorts. In Latin America, also, there is that, like in any group, there's going to be a tendency, to get into ideology, whatever they are. We just have to understand that, yes, ideologies are necessary, they exist, they're important, but we don't ground what we're about on ideology. We ground it on our faith commitment and fundamentally on the gospel. This idea, for various reasons, has not always been communicated very effectively in the church, mainly because since the time of Vatican II, we've been talking about evangelization. Have you heard a lot about that? The new evangelization, we've used this term, but we've really not always appreciated the fact that integral to the concept of communicating, proclaiming the gospel is also struggle on behalf of transformation of the world, or justice. In other words, justice isn't something that we just latch on to the idea of our mission and identity as Catholics. It's integral to it. So if you say that we are promoting the gospel, it means that we're working for justice. And this is what the church teaches, but apparently that seems to get sliced off, and we remain with a more kind of spiritualizing understanding of what evangelization is, when it's really very, very nitty-gritty. It's about being with the poor. It's about serving the poor. It's about understanding what their immediate needs are and what the structural underlying causes of their suffering is, and to work to change those conditions. That's effective love. So, insofar as we don't preach this, we fail to make the necessary connection between our faith and our justice. A third point that really is key for working in the area of justice with Latinos has to do with the fundamental importance of the particular kind of Catholicism that Latinos celebrate and live, namely religiosidad popular, what we call popular Catholicism, the name of our kind of Catholicism, which is one of the most distinctive, unique forms of Catholicism in the world, was the one that was implanted in Latin America 5 centuries ago, and that is at the root of the way that Latinos are Catholic. It's not that we're different from all the other Catholics in the world, but there is something very distinctive. Okay, good. Something very, very distinctive. What it means then is that the motivation to get involved in social action with Latinos is most effective when it's mediated through the symbols and the rituals and the stories that are very important to them. The example I would give is that when Cesar Chavez wanted to organize field workers in this country, he did it with the banner of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And if you go to Argentina today, there are 2 places that are an example of how the combination of the ordinary faith of the people focused in the direction of struggle to bring about a better life for themselves is happening. You should go to the shrine of Our Lady of Luján outside of Buenos Aires, or to the shrine of San Cayetano, because those are places where there's devotion, there's prayer, there's solidarity, there's coming together. More than anything else, there's fiesta, because one of the great insights of Latino popular religion is precisely that when we celebrate the faith, we always have a good time along with it, And that makes, the difficulty, the harshness, the burden, or whatever you want to call it, of the struggle for justice, or politics, if you want to call it that, in that sense, it lightens it, and it makes it bearable for all of us. And it's one of the great insights that Latinos can give to the church. Community organizing in this country, in the style of Saul Alinsky, has been one of the most important ways in which we have formed good church-based leaders in leadership, in my experience, over the past 50 years. And I just throw that out there because we need to look for the situations that will create leadership, because we have a lot of good Latinos, but they don't necessarily have the opportunities to have the experience to get out there and do things and to learn what it means to really lead a community, But we need to do it in our distinctive, unique way. Everybody, as you go around this country, everybody sees it. We've got 53 million Latinos in the United States. And am I telling a tale out of school to say, we don't have the leadership, either in the church or in civil society, that such an important, youthful group has to offer. And I think the question that we have to ask ourselves is, why? And why is this situation allowed to continue?
That was wonderful, Father Deck. I have a few reflections. Number one, on feast days, I try to have a lot of fun at least. I go salsa dancing, whether it's Monday, Thursday, or something. And also, I think one of the most important things you said is that our faith is only verifiable if we love our neighbor. This is about as biblical as we can get. I think we're quoting Jesus at least 70 times. So talking about love of neighbor, maybe Lydia, maybe you could help us walk through. We have a lot of people here that have a lot of energy that want to help their neighbor, and maybe they don't want to organize forums, but maybe they want to do other things. And this can CRS help that? Or maybe there's like few things they can do every day, maybe small things.
Great. Yes, the short answer and simple answer is there's many ways for all of you to get involved with helping our neighbor, helping the poor overseas. And before I give you some specific examples, I want to share a reflection written by one of our former board members, Bishop Daniel Flores of Brownsville, Texas. And this is a reflection he gave last September, which I think is also something good for all of us to reflect on. And Bishop Flores said, "The Holy Father speaks often of the culture of indifference, that neither hears the cry of the poor nor sees their suffering. Our task is to shake our culture, accustomed to the fruits of an economy that serves many, but not all of our people well, out of a poverty of indifference." He continues to say, "We will be credible evangelizers if we do something, namely roll up our sleeves and enter the space where openness to human relations is first. And when encountering the pain of another, we embrace that other person. God is there, and it is a challenge to the world to believe this and to say it. God is in the embrace of the one who suffers. But they will not believe us when we say God is to be found there, in that place where a brother or sister suffers, unless they see the church dwelling in that place and living the human encounter it brings with it. That, Bishop Flores thinks, is what the Holy Father means when he speaks of evangelization and says that he wants a church which is poor and for the poor. And I can think of no better way for us to roll up our sleeves than to get involved with the mission of Catholic Relief Services. Those of you who are here tonight, although I don't know you personally, I suspect that you're blessed to be well on your way to good educations and professional careers. And I would urge you not to forget where your parents came from, nor your cultural traditions and history that shape the values of your parents and ancestors. I was touched by your remarks, and I always, probably on a daily basis, am thinking of these gifts, of these treasures that have been bestowed upon me by my parents. And maybe more so, my mother actually just passed away recently, and incredible to me to hear how much of an impact she had on our local community in Baltimore, with the mainly immigrant community in Baltimore, of a medical clinic that she founded years ago and continued to serve in a capacity as a medical advisor there. So these are things that really have impacted and shaped my life. So I have 3 suggestions for your involvement. First, I would urge you towards getting involved in our advocacy efforts, especially in areas like immigration reform, unaccompanied child migrants, human trafficking, and the over 30 million people that Pope Francis talks about who live in slave-like conditions today in the world, as well as opportunities for education for other young Latinos in this country. For those of you who can, you must vote and get others like you to vote and raise your voices. Please consider joining Catholics Confront Global Poverty and take an active role in our priority advocacy issues. The second way that I would encourage you to get involved is to give back with time, talent, and money to causes in your local communities. It's important for you to start doing this now, not waiting until you're more comfortable economically. I think it's very important for us to remember that giving is one important way of expressing our love and faith and solidarity with those in need. Finally, I would encourage, and I'm sure many of you already are world citizens, not only caring about your local community and eager to learn, read, listen, all you can to world events, especially as they affect the poor and disadvantaged. The 60s and 70s, I was still very little or not born then, but I'm over 40, but I wasn't an activist in the 60s. But we're an era of student involvement and awareness of responsibility for the world. And today's young people need to recapture this, especially in areas of economic inequality, climate change, and intolerance of race, religion, and ethnic groups. CRS has lots of points of entry for many of these issues that I've mentioned. From the Catholics Confront Global Poverty campaign that we run in conjunction with the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops. Right now, we are ready to kick off our Lenten program called Rice Bowl. There's fair trade activities you can get involved in, and more. And I have many resources that I lugged all the way from Baltimore, so please take them home with you, where you can learn more and get involved with our work. So I would encourage you to please get involved in any way that you can.
That's wonderful. I encourage all of you guys to get involved with Lydia, with us, or maybe you have other plans that you're thinking, I don't know if I should do it, but, just always do it. But you mentioned some things like, we should take a strong stance against human trafficking, or against poverty. And I think some things are easier to discern that are evil, like human trafficking, that's slavery. But sometimes knowing what is charity is a little harder. Let's say you have a very important ethical decision to make at work. And so, Ambassador Noriega, there's a ton of people in the audience that work in all sorts of places, whether private sector, government, and so maybe you can talk about how maybe your faith helped make some certain choices so that you could decide what was acting as a Catholic in charity.
Well, I rehearsed to answer to the previous question, so I'll,
Sorry.
but thanks for switching it up on me. But to something easy like ethics
In the workplace.
in the workplace of all places. I mean, you have to understand. I've been involved in politics since I was 13 years old or so, and people don't assume that people who are involved in politics particularly care about ethics. And you know what? Unfortunately, that's too true today. I made a speech in San Antonio, nice people, and a young lady followed me out to the car, and she said, this is a great event, the World Affairs Council. Was this where I spoke, and she said, this is the first one of these I came. I want to get more involved in politics. And so I want to start reading a little bit more. If you have some suggestions. She says, for example, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, and I'm going to try to figure out who's telling the truth. I said, well, actually I can answer this question fairly quickly. I said to her, none of them are. None of them are. Hundreds of millions, billions of dollars for political discourse, commercials that, for the most part, do whatever they can to obscure the truth. This has gotten sick. This has gotten sick. I mean, I'm a loyal Republican, but this is on both sides. To take something that your opponent said out of context 30 years ago, or take a bill and say he voted for this or that, or she voted for this or that, and take your supporters' hardworking money, the money of hardworking supporters, and spending it to beguile your population. Politics is sick. It's gotten. I mean, we have to do better, and that's going to require the involvement of people. Not more and more, they're estranged from this. In the last presidential election was the third time in American history that fewer people voted than in the previous election. This happened in 1864. And whatever it was during 44, during World War II, 1944, in the middle of the wars. Fewer people voted because the campaign of both the incumbent president and the others was to suppress votes, suppress participation, by saying this guy's too rich to relate to you, or to say that these people want to take what you've got. And they're basically dishonest and corrupt. Is it any wonder why fewer people participate? So it's really important that you folks, as young people, step up to the plate and change the direction of this country, because it's a mess. You don't have to be involved in politics, but some of you got to get involved and be engaged and make the contributions and change the way business is done in these campaigns and communicating. We're also bankrupt. And I've been part of this. I said to somebody the other day, I've been here 31 years, I said, I ought to get a bumper sticker that says part of the problem. Because when I came to town in '83, they said, don't worry about the debt. We owe it to ourselves. It's only, and by the way, it's only 20% of GDP. Does anybody know what GDP percentages of our debt is to GDP ratio? It's over 100%. They're developing countries, poor, desperately poor developing countries with dysfunctional political systems that aren't as indebted as this one. And we're going to have to make some intelligent choices about how we dig out of this hole, because it's absolutely immoral that we're saddling the next generations with this debt. We're not making it, our politicians aren't expected to make serious decisions about priorities. There's nothing to cut. There's no dollars can be cut out of a budget of, what, $4 trillion? I mean, that's a lie. Our government isn't that efficient. We had a sequestration, and they said, planes are going to be falling from the sky, and we're going to have to fire 40,000 government workers. Do you know how many were fired because of sequestration? There's a General Accounting Office, or Government Accountability Office study on this. One person.
Unlucky guy.
And and who was this poor guy? I mean, what was he doing wrong? I'm not trying to make a sort of a joke about this, but because there's a study that says that. We have to make serious decisions about the future. I mean, we can't continue to, spend money we don't have, and look for priorities. And we're now at a point where more people are getting government benefits of some kind than are taking home paychecks in the private sector. Are we sure that's where we want to go? And so I'm not going to answer all these, we're not going to answer all these questions now, but we ought to ask them. And don't count on politicians to give you an honest answer. I hate to be disrespectful, because some of them are my friends and they're good people, but the system's wrong. And don't hate the player, hate the game. We got to do something about this, and it's going to require more people being involved, not fewer.
Well, this is great, because I want everyone here to be involved in making society for the better. Father Alan Deck, how do you feel that the Catholic Church can equip these fallen away young Latinos with the right ethics tools, with the right ways to analyze these institutions to improve them?
Yeah. Well, I think Ambassador Noriega's what he shared with us reminded me of something that Pope Francis has said many times. I'm trying to finish a book on Pope Francis right now, so I've had to read a lot of what he said in the past. Pope Francis likes to quote Pope Pius XI, who said, "Politics is one of the highest forms of charity. Politics is one of the highest forms of love." Okay? Properly understood, right on. It's a Catholic idea. People get all upset, we don't get involved in politics. Just the contrary. We get deeply involved in politics, not the politics of political parties, of ideologies, of partisanship. No, but politics as concern for matters of social concern, or in investment in matters that make a difference for people, especially the most excluded and forgotten people. So, the high vocation of politics is something to be greatly appreciated. In terms of what the church can offer, I think, particularly if we're talking in a Latino context, the most important thing would be the realization that in Latino culture and in Catholic thought, the community comes before the individual. It's a very problematic idea, especially in the United States. This is a Catholic idea. My friend Roberto Goizueta, professor at Boston College, a Latino theologian, puts it this way: the community is the birthplace of the person, the community. And so, when we're thinking about the connection between faith and justice, I think it's very important to put it in the context of how we, as a community of faith, help each other discern and make our choices and live our lives. And of course, this is easier said than done, huh? But I wanted to make a little commercial. I think I left it up here. Where were those books that I brought? Oh, here they are. There's a commercial, excuse me. These two little books, they came out last year and this year, are in Spanish, and they're called La Justicia Brota de la Fe, Justice Flows from Faith. And the point of these two little books, which are being taken around the country by Renew International, I don't know if you've ever heard of Renew, but it's a Catholic group that forms small faith-sharing groups in Catholic parishes. It's been doing it for about 40 years, 45 years. The point of these little books is that they're resources for parish-based communities who want to study the scriptures, who want to study the Bible, but who also want to learn about Catholic social teaching and also help each other discover where God is leading them in terms of the issues that they have to face, whatever they might be in their community, whether it's immigration or whatever. The reason I mention this and make this commercial is not so much I'm trying to promote this as much as I am trying to make this concept that what's going to make a difference is going to be precisely the ability that we have to come together and to help each other discover the way ahead. In other words, it's not just a question of how capable are each one of us to do some kind of a moral, ethical analysis. Those are all good things that we need to do. But when it comes to the moment of transferring that into something that's really going to make a difference in people's lives, then we have to develop the habit of, another Catholic word, solidarity. Solidarity. In the United States, it's a little difficult to raise this particular concept of solidarity with people, huh? Because fundamentally, all of us, including us Catholics, have been schooled, are being schooled it's all about working our way up the ladder of whatever, of success, huh? And this just is not a Christian idea. It disturbs me very much that I teach at a university, and this is common to universities, ours is an exception, where every now and then we talk about what the university is about, producing people for others, men and women for others, for instance, especially in a Jesuit university, okay? And yet, what everybody's nervous about is, how much money am I going to make when I finish here? Where am I going to live? What kind of a car am I going to drive? These kinds of questions, huh? Well, is it about faith or isn't it about faith? And who are we following? You see, what are we following? That's why I really think that we need to just kind of lay it out there. And yeah, to that extent, realize that Pope Francis, I think, is giving us a wonderful example, because I think he's trying to make the point that when everything is said and done, the fundamental way in which we evangelize, in which the Catholic Church really witnesses to its faith in Jesus, is by the extent to which it is attentive to the needs of the poor.